learners. Do you know the basic difference between science and humanities? Yes. Science, as we all know, is the knowledge from the careful study of the structure and behavior of the physical world, especially by watching, measuring, and doing experiments, and the development of theories to describe the results of these activities. Pure or applied science, recent developments in science and technology, space travel is one of the marvels or wonders of modern science. And humanities is the literature, language, history, philosophy and other subjects that are not a science or the study of these subjects. So in this module, we will try to learn instructional designing for humanities and science teaching. And now let me ask a question. What is instructional design? Well said. Yes, as we have discussed earlier, instructional design is a system of developing well-structured instructional materials using objectives, related teaching strategies, systematic feedback and evaluation. On last week, we were discussing about the different models of instructional design. Can any one of you list down any 5 of them? Yes, ADDIE model, Ashwa, Dick and Carey model, Cognitive Apprenticeship model and 4C-ID model. What are the steps or phases in ADDIE model? Yes, analysis, design, development, implementation and evaluation. So we will discuss instructional designing for humanities and science teaching in the light of ADDIE model. First phase is analysis phase. The first phase, analysis, deals with 2 aspects. First one, analyze your learners and gather as much information as you can on them. Second, analyze your broad goals for the lesson or unit. What is it you are hoping to achieve? In analyzing your learners or understanding your learners, a thorough need analysis obtains the following information. First one, your learners' backgrounds, that is age, education, profession, position and organization, and preferred learning styles. Second, their level of knowledge on the topic, their expectations from the course or lecture. What relevant knowledge and skills do they need to learn? What do they already know? How varied are they in knowledge and learning styles? How well can they learn? What study skills? What motivational and interest attitudes to teaching or learning methods? What are their obstacles to their learning, such as anxiety, color blindness, lack of concentration, computer access? Now we will discuss the second aspect of analysis phase. Analyze your broad goals for the lesson or unit. What is it you are hoping to achieve? Or developing your learning goals. When you design any course, unit or lesson, the first question you must ask yourself are, what are my goals? What do I hope that students will know at the end of our experience? What do I want students to be able to do? Obviously, your goals will vary depending on the subject of your course, that is, whether it is humanities or science. If you are developing a specific lesson, you will usually only have 1 or 2 broad goals. If you are developing a unit or a whole course, you may have several learning goals. Next is design phase. The 2 main aspects of this phase are identify learning objectives and identify outcomes. Identify learning objectives deals with what specific skills and knowledge do you wish students to obtain. For example, students will be able to describe digestive system or able to describe proper nouns. Developing learning objectives after identifying your broad learning goals and thinking about your learners and what you know of them, you must then develop specific learning objectives. Although related to your goals, learning objectives are not the same. Learning objectives are more specific, describing in more explicit detail what you expect that students will know and be able to do. Identify outcomes deals with how will you know that the students have achieved your learning objectives. How will you assess learning? Authentic assessment. If we have designed our learning objectives well, then we have also created an easy framework for us to begin developing ways to assess learning. There are a variety of ways to evaluate student learning, from test papers to projects and presentations. One fact that we do know about how we learn is that we are best able to understand facts and information when we use them in context. That is, we interact with process information in the same ways that we would use that information in the real world. For example, we are better able to learn multiplication skills by actually practicing how to do multiplication. When we look at evaluating student learning and determining if students have developed the skills and knowledge we defined in our learning objectives, we must focus on creating and using assessment tools that will most effectively allow students to demonstrate their knowledge. Allow for concrete skill demonstrations. If the lesson is on how a student would write a letter, then the student would actually produce a letter, and that letter would be measured against a sample letter to determine if it met standards of quality. Then development phase, which deals with develop the instructional strategies and plan the logistics. In develop phase, your instructional strategies, that is, how will you facilitate students in learning the objectives you identified so that they are able to achieve the outcomes you have set for them. In facilitating learning and identifying instructional strategies, we know that students have different learning styles. Learners need to learn skills in context. Learning is social. Students are motivated by activity, appropriate challenge levels, and a pace and style that is facilitative rather than instructive. With this in mind, it's time to develop appropriate instructional strategies. Now we will discuss guidelines for selecting instructional strategies. First one, begin with a product in mind. When student must produce something as part of a lesson, this creates a goal-oriented mindset. Students clearly understand expectations and are automatically more comfortable. Second, reduce the level of threat. Learning is primarily a social activity. We are worried about how we will look in front of teachers and fellow students. We are concerned that we won't be able to learn the material or that someone will find out we can't read as well as we would like. Third one, instructors must develop classroom norms that communicate that it's safe to learn in their classroom. They should also model their own learning, uncertainty, and anxiety when appropriate. If a lesson doesn't go well, acknowledge that and show students the process you go through to identify what's wrong and how to fix it. Fourth one, establish relevance. We are all motivated by the WIFM, What's in it for me? Strategies you select should help demonstrate relevance to students so that they see connections and are more motivated to learn. Fifth one, clearly and appropriately link strategies to objectives. If the objective is the student will be able to cut a board using a circular saw, clearly any instruction must involve an actual demonstration of how to accomplish this task. Reading about it in a book or listening to a lecture on how to cut a board will not do it. Sixth one, strategies should match needs and characteristics of learners. Each individual has a channel of learning, ways that allow them to process and use information. Individuals who are more hands-on do not learn well through reading a book. Even if you are teaching, reading your instructions will be more effective if you include opportunities for movement and touching. Plan the logistics deals with how will you group students, how will you arrange the classroom, what tools and materials will students have available to them. As important to learning as the specific instructional strategies you use are classroom logistics. Things like class ground rules, the physical layout of the classroom, the use of teams, all of these logistics issues influence learning. And we know that this will be different for each specific areas in humanities and science subjects. Some basic logistical principles. First one, rows imply lecture. They make it difficult for students to interact with one another and they put the instructor at the center of learning experience. Circles, horseshoes and other configurations promote more interactions and a greater sense of community. Second one, have students set ground rules and expectations. Work with students to establish some basic expectations, what they can expect from you and what you can expect from them. Use learning contracts, ground rules lists, and other tools to include students in the setting and enforcing of individual and group norms. Third one, be consistent. Nothing causes a faster breakdown in norms than inconsistency. Students must understand expectations and then see that both the instructor and students are held accountable for those expectations. Fourth one, work in teams but do so strategically. Pay attention to how you form teams. There are times when teams need particular expertise or experience and times when that is not necessary. There are times when it's appropriate to let students form their own teams and when it's better for you to make assignments. Your learning objectives and strategies can help you determine the best methods for team formation. Implementation phase. Putting the lesson into practice is either the easiest or hardest step in the process. Usually, if you have planned well, the implementation phase is when you get to see the fruits of your labor. If you haven't planned, then this is often where you see unmotivated students and ineffective lessons. When it works, probably the best thing about teaching is going through a lesson and seeing students get excited and motivated by the process. When it does not work, sometimes, no matter how well you have planned or what you have pulled together, the lesson just doesn't work. Students do not understand or they seem unmotivated and disengaged. This is often when behavioral issues erupt because students are either challenged too much by the material or are insufficiently challenged so that they become bored. When it's clear that things aren't going well, you have a few options. Stop the lesson and find out from the students what is going on. Is it the lesson? Is there something else going on? Sometimes it's better to stop and deal with whatever open issues may exist than to try to slog your way through the rest of the plan. Take a break and regroup. Sometimes you need a minute to pull your head together to try something else.
Evaluation phase.
Were you successful? Did students learn? Did they have fun doing it? What should you change for the next time?
Instructional designing is a very important aspect in the teaching learning process as it gives maximum benefit for the learner. A properly designed instruction, whether it is humanities or science teaching, is an effective way to acquire good education. So try to be an effective instructional designer. Thank you.